I'm Asha. I work with the Word Lab, and we host monthly editions of City Scripts, which culminates in an annual festival in May. Today, we have Robert with us, who's going to be talking about his lovely library and garden, which is also his home and studio. And we had the pleasure of hosting him in 2022 to talk about his book, Bombay Imagined. And today he's going to talk to us about how he built his library, what it means to build a collection on of rare books that look at urban India, and the fact that it's publicly accessible, and what basically like what that does to putting a collection like that out in the world, and how he plans to use it further. All, all over to you, please. Thanks.
Um, so what I'm going to be sharing about today is it's the culmination of 3 years of really intense, focused work, and I think before that, 15 years of life in Mumbai and now in Bangalore. Um, yeah, and I'll begin. Asha reached out, so it's because of you that we're all here. So thank you, and thanks to everyone who's joined on Zoom. Um, One of my favorite architects, Glenn Murcutt, Australia-based architect, one of his advices to young practitioners is do ordinary things extraordinarily well. Right? I love that idea. And I sent Asha, Ashani, and Pooja a blurb for this talk, and it was a shitty first draft. It was terrible. And they could have just taken it, copy pasted, put it online, and we would have been set. But they didn't. They rewrote it, and they changed the whole arc of this evening's talk. It's the first talk on the Urbs Indis Library. They did something that could have been ordinary, and they did it extraordinarily well. So thank you, sincerely, thank you for that. And in many ways, everything you'll see this evening. So they came up with the title, A Living Archive. The first title I gave was Nothing Like This, and it's so much better. A Living Archive, I love that. We'll keep coming back to this in the evening. And the entire project, everything you'll see, in many ways, is this. It's people doing ordinary things, many people doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. Tina and Kai, who are here, my wife and son, Tina's parents, my parents, grandparents, so many people, a number of consultants, contractors, so many people, colleagues have contributed to this project, doing little things extraordinarily well. So in many ways, I like to think I'm almost like a spokesperson for this entire community of people who have been working on what we'll be exploring this evening. A little bit about myself. I'm an introvert. I really discovered this in the pandemic. I'm an architect. And I love humor. I absolutely love humor. You are warned. And given my current position, that would make me a stand-up architectural comedian. I like to think maybe I'm the only one in India. It's exciting. Has anyone here been to Ooty? Yeah. So, going to Ooty, you see the hairpin bins, right? And they number them 1 of 36, 2 of 36. It helps you pace the journey, right? And if you're like me, it also paces your nausea. You feel really sick by like 36 of 36. So what we're going to do, all the jokes this evening will be numbered, okay? So you can pace the talk, and if you feel nauseous, the bathroom's at the back left. I've checked it out. It's good to go. Yeah, so just keep an eye there. That will be the indicator. Yeah, my name is Robert Stevens. I came to Bombay in 2007. I was there for 16 years in Bangalore for the last 2 years. And I've traveled a fair amount by air in India. And whenever I would land somewhere, there would often be someone with a placard. And this was one name, Mr. Robot. Welcome, Mr. Rabart. Robert Steppens. Robert Stefans. And not flight related, but my favorite, Robert Bhai. Right? Lovely. It's a receipt for 35 coffees. I love coffee. This is just a receipt for one day, believe it or not. I love archives, right? The names, it's an archive. It's a collection of data, of information over time. I love archives. As Asha mentioned, the last time I was here at IHS, I was speaking about Bombay Imagined, 200 plans for the maximum city, beginning in 1670, continuing to 2020. 350 years of failed dreams for the city. A lot of archival drawings, speculations, artworks created based on historical data, unrealized plans. And Bombay Imagine was inspired by this book, yeah, Professional Papers on Indian Engineering, 1868. And within this was the first plan I discovered for Bombay. It captured my imagination. There's a drainage plan by a gentleman, an engineer named Hector Tuluk. And this was one of the plans he developed for an idea for draining the city. And we'll come back to this a bit later. But I love archives and I love books. Okay, just something as simple and beautiful. I love books. Those combined led me to about 22 institutes around the world on 3 continents. And there's something I learned in exploring all of these that I combined with other experiences, a couple of deep truths. One of them is this: a really good bathroom can change your life, right? I firmly believe that completely and totally. Yeah, I said this to a friend and a client in a meeting a few months ago, and he immediately responded, "So can a bad one," right? Yeah, absolutely. And the same applies for a library, right? It absolutely applies. A really good library can change your life. This is me at the National Library of Scotland. This is me at a library that will go unnamed. That's the same person. Look at that face, right? A really good library can change your life, and so can a bad one. Okay, I love archives, books, and I love libraries. March 2021, right? The pandemic's raging. We've all forgotten about that, but the pandemic's raging. This is Kai. Kai's here. This is Kai in our apartment in Mumbai. The entire apartment becomes an artwork, and we decide to take a break for a month and come to Bangalore. This is Tina's parents. One evening, we're here for about a month in March. And one evening, we say, let's have a bonfire. We all go out together to this plot that Tina's parents purchased about 20 years ago and just sat on. And we're gathered around this fire. This is Tina, Kai again, Kai's cousin sister from another mister. And Tina and I look at each other after the evening and we say, this is beautiful. This can be our life. And we're connected to the ground for the first time in about a decade of being married. We're connected to the ground in a way that we had lost previously. So that evening, March 19, 2021, we decide we're going to build a home. We're going to build an architecture studio, and we're going to build a library. And it's all going to be in one space. And then it took 3 years, a number of baby steps to realize that. The first thing we learned is Bangalore, you have to bring your own water, basically. In Bombay, it just comes from a tap. Bangalore, you kind of have to arrange it yourself. And we did what everyone does. We contacted Kannan Borewells, right? So this gentleman from the company comes to site, walks around, and he says, I'm very sorry, there's no water here. You're going to have to dig 900 to 1,000 feet deep to get water. And I don't know why, but it was devastating and it didn't feel right. So one thing I've realized in reflecting on this, if you need something that looks like a rocket launcher to make your life work, question it, right? Not necessarily saying it's wrong, but question it. So we questioned it. We said, okay, what are the other possibilities? What else could we do? Fortunately, a friend, Radha, put us in touch with Biome, who put us in touch with this gentleman, Ramakrishna. He's a traditional well digger. He and his family have been doing this, making open wells for generations. And it's kind of meeting him is like meeting a head of state, I feel. Like you have to go through this vetting process and only you pass all of that, then you get to meet the man himself. But Ramakrishna was great. He and his team came, they started digging, and at 4 feet, they hit water. 4 feet, right? And I like to think he was so excited in this image, he called his wife. I'm just kidding. I have no idea who he was speaking to, but he was thrilled, right? At 10 feet, there's so much water, they have to constantly pump out. At 20 feet, there's so much water, the ground is so saturated, the earth is caving. It's absolutely caving. They couldn't dig any further. Right? And this was 50 layers of the earth that they had taken out manually, from red at the top going down to a light gray. This is the section of the earth. And this, coming back to that first fire image, right? We're connecting with the ground for the first time in a decade, if not much more. And around the same time, we discover Paul Bogart's book, The Ground Beneath Us. And he writes all about this humans' connection, our connection with the ground. And he says this in the book: soil, the living entity beneath our feet, is the most amazing world that we know almost nothing about. Right? Absolutely. We knew nothing about it. And I love he calls it the living entity, because I like to think soil is a living archive also. Right? You see the section, it's an archive. It's a section of time, information, material through time, and it's alive. It has water, it has streams, microstreams, it harbors life. Amazing. It's a living archive. And then they did this. They wrapped the well in stone, dry granite masonry, and it was possibly the most beautiful construction I had ever seen. There wasn't one drawing involved. They just did it, and they did what they had been doing for generations. And it changed our lives. So we decided when we saw this, whatever we do going forward has to aspire to be as beautiful as what they have made, right? That was the brief we gave ourselves. We're doing a number of walkthroughs, and every walkthrough begins at the well. There's something about it. People gravitate towards it. There's something about it that draws us to this moment. This is one reaction. The biggest revelation was this open well built by true artists who have managed to preserve a sustainable way of building these wells that will, in all probability, last for generations. Right? I love that reaction. The biggest revelation. Right? Did you notice this on the sign since 1971? Right? That's about the time the bore well comes to India, early 1970s. And it got me thinking, what did we do before 1971? Right? What was the process? And part of the library is this book from 1957. It was a thesis, Bangalore, a socio-ecological study. And in this, Mr. KNV says, in almost all extensions, gardens are found and vegetables and flowers are grown extensively. He's talking about neighborhood extensions. The cultivators have small plots of nursery gardens in which there are wells 20 feet deep to supply water. Wells 20 feet deep, exactly. Right? The ground is a living archive, right? We may forget as a society, as a culture. The ground does not forget, right? It's living, it's an archive. So now we have to come above ground, right? We're going to construct something. We have this curved room in the front, and the first design is something like this. It's this curved, exposed RCC wall, very architectural, textured concrete. But Ramakrishna changed all that, right? We said we have to make something that aspires to be as beautiful as the well. So we change. And there's this sketch. What if we change the curved wall to granite blocks, just like the well? So we had this sketch, started exploring, and stumbled upon a workshop near Hebel Flyover of temple makers. And we started doing mock-ups and exploring. Can we make a wall out of granite blocks, just like Ramakrishna made in the well? These are the samples we made. And then, yes, it's possible. And this is day one installation on site. And then the final work was something like this. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. All inspired by the well, right? There are a few glass blocks that we'll talk about in some time. This is how it looks from the street. It's the only building in our neighborhood that follows setback and sanction regulations, which gives it this feel of being like a little bit home for an introvert, right? Because it's set back. And that's deliberate, right? Because I'm an introvert. We like being quiet. The building's shy. It's hiding behind this mango tree that Tina's parents planted 15 years ago. But it's friendly. And we decided it's friendly because there's no compound wall, right? And this was the compound wall that was on the property. And what we decided early on is we're just going to demolish it. And it was the biggest mistake we made in the project. Biggest mistake, because we paid someone to do it. In the US, people pay to break things, and they have these things called rage rooms, and they're very popular. I think it's like $30 an hour. And if I had to do it again, I would have done an open call for architects to come and break this wall themselves, because as a community, we have unresolved psychological issues. Trust me. And this would definitely help address those. But it is what it is. And this is the transformation. Nothing changes in this image except the compound wall. And what a difference. No, it's unbelievable. The mango tree is like it's shining. It's this heirloom that we've received. The stonework is just, it's beautiful. And I like to ask this question. Imagine how much beauty goes unseen in our cities because of compound walls, right? Like that's a literal question. Forget the figurative one, which is deeper, but just literally, just imagine how much is lost. Let's move in. This is the front door. It's a very confusing door for many people. It's community sized. So you kind of swing it, swing it like a pivot, and it reveals this garden inside. You enter into the garden. The garden comes inside as well to the space. And we decided we're connecting with the ground, right? We're pushing that idea of really being connected to the earth. 10% of the entire plot is concretized. 90% is natural earth, right? We're connecting to the ground. That's the open well for context. This is part of the architecture studio work table. This is a scholar's table for the library. And then here's a water treatment, a natural water treatment system within the property, which we'll talk about a bit more. So the water treatment system is inspired by this gentleman again, Hector Tulloch, whose book first inspired Bombay Imagined. So in this drainage scheme for Bombay, he has an idea. He says, let's take all the wastewater of the island city, all the water that's refuse, toilet water, wastewater, and let's use it to irrigate agricultural land and wasteland at the edge of the city, right? All the water was to be reused, recycled, not thrown into the sea, not wasted, not polluting. That was his dream. It would be a completely closed loop at an urban scale. And I always loved that idea. So he said, okay, Hector Tulloch failed. So his project's in Bombay Imagine, but we can implement it at our scale. So we said all the water from the house, the studio, the library is to be reused for irrigation in the garden, and it will be treated on site. And that's what we did. This is the treatment zone, the treatment system. Just walk you through it. This is the community door on the left. These are the pipes for gray water, dark gray, kitchen water, and then black water. This is the grease trap. And then all of that water goes here. The gray and dark gray goes to a reed bed system. This is the bioseptic tank for black water, where bacteria, anaerobic bacteria, treat the water. And then all the treated water goes to a 1,000-liter underground tank, which is then, from there, it's pumped and used for irrigation. So it's a complete treatment system on the property. One of the things I love about it is this underground tank. When water falls into it, we can hear that. So when you're in the house, you're using water, you can hear, proportionate to your use, the sound. And something about that I really like. And the question is, of course, is often, does it smell? Surely it stinks a little. And I have proof it does not. This is the reed bed system. And below this is the black water, the bioseptic treatment system. Everyone is smiling, right? Yeah, and only half the people were paid to smile. So it's great. Yeah, thank you. And the garden loves the water. Just look, it's like it's so happy. Please come visit. I think you feel the happiness of the plants with this water. And what this tells me is another kind of deep truth. Ideas never die. They never die, right? It's a living archive. I think that's one of the powers of archives. When you keep them alive, you can bring ideas that have gone unrealized and bring them to life, to another chance. Let's move inside to the curved room, right? This is the other side of that curved stone wall, that glass block wall. This is my workspace. It's also the Bombay reading room. But you see these about 104 glass blocks. These were made by artisans outside Delhi. And yeah, no problem. Yeah. And one of the things I love about the glass blocks, they're 75% sand, which is basically recycled granite and stone, which means it's like a transparent archive. I love that. It's an idea I'm still working through. But we made 105 of these glass blocks that are interspersed in this wall. And on the right is the Bombay Reading Room, a really extensive range of books. This is my favorite from the collection. It belonged to Governor Bartlett Free, one of the kind of more well-known governors of Bombay in the 1860s. And it was a book written by a man named William Walker, who was constantly thinking of ways to improve the city, make it a better place to live. This is Walker. I consider him the city's first foreign environmentally minded citizen activist. It's a mouthful, but he was incredible. So Bombay Imagine was actually dedicated to him, and 2 of his books are in the collection, the Bombay Reading Room. In total, there's about 300 titles. It's a city that constantly inspires writing. Yeah, Kai, you see yourself there. Yeah. It's always inspiring books. An amazing city. Very challenging city, but amazing. Now, one of the limitations of crowded libraries is all you see is the spine of books, oftentimes, right? That's a limitation because people spend their whole creative lives designing book covers. So one challenge we gave ourselves, how can we create a space where you see books, but the book covers also are visible? So the back of the shelf is something like this. You can see book covers, they're curated, they'll change every few months as a collection. And then you might notice a shower and a tap, right? This is also the bathroom. And opposite the WC, so we curate the book covers kind of thoughtfully. Opposite the WC is this book, In Search of Dignity and Justice, The Untold Story of Conservancy Workers, right? One of the biggest challenges still of our cities is how waste, once it leaves our homes, is managed or mismanaged. So a really good bathroom can change your life, right? And that applies to libraries also, right? So it's a bathroom and it's part of the library. I love this image. Left is the Bombay Reading Room, right is that wastewater treatment space, about 20 feet separating a 150-year-old idea, right? On the left is Hector Tulloch's idea of treating a city's water. On the right is the treatment actually happening, right? It's a living archive. It's active. Shortly after we moved in, my father-in-law asked me, who's Mohammed Fayazuddin? Right? He said, looks like it's the owner of the house. But yeah, it's not. Anyone here know Mohammed Fayazuddin by chance? No, amazing, right? Yeah. So this is him as a young man. He grew up in Hyderabad, studied at JJ in Bombay under Claude Batley, went to AA in London, and then came back and planned cities for the Nizam. Planned cities all across Hyderabad. Was prolific, absolutely prolific. This is one of the books he wrote, Housing and Planning for India, right? And it's I got this book from a bookseller in Delhi, and it's signed by Fayazuddin. It's very special, one of my favorite books. Within this is one of his plans, master plan for Greater Hyderabad. You can see he's wrapping a green belt around the city. Within the city, he's interspersing green pockets, gardens. He's thinking deeply, right, about the urban environment. His family says he's the first trained town planner in India. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it sounds great. No, amazing. This is Mr. Fayazuddin, of course, next to Nehru, and then in between is George Pepler, British town planner. This image is taken in Delhi shortly after Fayazuddin attended a housing exhibition. And one of the many books he published in his lifetime is this, Houses for the Masses, right? So he's thinking about city planning, planning Hyderabad, other towns throughout the state. He's writing books about housing, practicing. But my favorite is this. So I've been in touch with his son, Riaz. Riaz is about 87 years old now. We've been in touch on WhatsApp for the last 6 years. My favorite part of our conversation is this. Tomorrow on 22nd September is Mr. Fayazuddin's 117th birthday. I miss him so much. He was a great father and a great individual, right? He was a great father and a great individual. We very rarely hear that about architects nowadays, right? We hear about how prolific they were, how many hundreds of projects they executed or dreamt of. But Riaz keeps coming back to this, the quality of his father as a person, right? It is a living archive, right? This is as much part of the archive as the work itself, in quotes. Let's move up through the space. So on the ground floor is part of the architecture studio. You can see all the samples, which we all architects have. On the right is the Urbs Indis Library, the extension from Bombay section. This is a distribution board cover for anyone here who likes distribution boards. And in the middle is this beautiful piece of wood, right? Teak wood. Any Louis Kahn fans here? Architect Louis Kahn? No? American architect. He's very famous for this conversation. Oops, I can't see it. Okay, it's behind my Zoom thing, but I'll paraphrase it. He asks Brick, what do you want to be? Right? It's a famous conversation. All the architects will know it. And Brick responds and says, well, I want to be an arch. And so he creates IAM, Ahmedabad, right? The kind of majestic arches, a lot of his work in Bangladesh. But often wonder, why did Louis Kahn stop these conversations with Brick, right? Why didn't he continue and ask, for example, Wood, what do you want to be, right? And I think if he did, Wood would say, well, I want to be tall, right? Wood wants to be tall. And it does. This is the wood we found for the space during construction. And it's beautiful, it's tall, right? So we said, okay, we'll use it this way. We sliced it into 30 millimeter thick pieces, and then these became the core of the library. Also the staircase that moves up through the space. Wood wants to be tall, yeah. The staircase that goes up to the first floor, it's also a library. It's where all the books are located, basically. It's a room, kind of a three-dimensional set of bookshelves. In this particular column, it's organized like column-wise. This particular column is dedicated to this gentleman, Patrick Geddes. These are some of the books. There's about 30 books, 13 pamphlets by Geddes, by other people, but about him, there are 22 biographies, 18 pamphlets, 2 exhibition catalogs, and 2 archival finding aids, total of 87 items. It's the largest collection of books by and about Geddes in India. And we did an exhibition of these books at the Hyderabad Lit Fest many years ago, and it put Kai completely to sleep. It was so boring for him. But my favorite moment was at one point in the exhibition, someone walked up to me and said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Yes." And there was this pause. "Are you Mr. Geddes?" And I went blank. It's like, "No, I am not Mr. Geddes. I am sorry to disappoint you." It's not his fault. This is Patrick Geddes, the founding father of city planning and environmentalism, right? What a heavy, heavy title. And these are some of the books he's writing in his lifetime: Outlines of General Biology, Principles of Economics, The Evolution of Sex, Town Planning in Lucknow, Every Man His Own Art Critic, Cities in Evolution, right? What a range. It's unbelievable. They called him a polymath, right? He's doing everything. And so I asked myself while preparing this talk, so I've considered Geddes a mentor for the last 6-7 years. How has he impacted this project? And a little bit scared because I didn't have an answer. And then someone who came for a walkthrough wrote this, and it was the answer. This is what she said. The happenstance of hearing water constantly flowing in the treatment chamber, proportionate to the use of the kitchen, the toilet or kitchen, feels so rooted and connected to the elements. The electrical DB panels, electrical lines, meters, grease trap, plumbing lines, bottom of the EWC, and even the broom closet being openly displayed was beautiful. The workings of the home were visible with no attempt to conceal them. I'm not sure what it was about this refreshing, unapologetic openness that I found so therapeutic. I can't read it, but I know the line. Um, it felt like every aspect of life. Um, I can't read it. I can't remember. I can move it. I don't want to misquote her because it's such a great line. Felt wholesomely embraced. I believe that's the line. Every aspect of life felt wholesomely embraced, right? And that's what Geddes is doing. He's embracing every aspect of life. He's not putting architecture on a pedestal and saying the other things follow, but everything is being embraced in one cohesive experience. I love that. Opposite the Patrick Geddes space is set on Bangalore. It's about 58 books. One of my favorites is the Yellow Pages, right? I grew up, some of y'all grew up reading the Yellow Pages. That was as recent as 2004. Can you believe that? Amazing. Archean greenstone belts of South India. That's another way of saying really old rock, right? The granite around Bangalore. This book basically says the granite in and around Bangalore is between 2.5 to 3.5 billion years old. Amazing. It predates life as we understand it. We just take it for granted because it's prolific. So when I see this stone now, I see it in a new light, right? It's from the primordial crust of the earth. Amazing. Only 8% of earth today is this stone. It has this timeless feel. No, I like to think like feels time. Maybe it actually is timeless. That's why it feels this way. And then, of course, this incredible publication, Water Problems of the Fastest Growing City of India. What a title. Amazing. Other collections are on Ahmedabad, Chennai, Patna, Hyderabad, and then growing collections on Delhi, Calcutta, and Varanasi. As we get liquidity, we expand the collection, which is not going well right now, but we'll get there. And then as you go up through the space begins to split. So on the right is the kitchen and living room, right? On the left are more books. These are mostly Tina's books. And this is where you begin to experience one of the core ideas of this space. And it's inspired by the Library of Fragile History, where the authors Pettigrew and Wedwin say this. In many monasteries, a separate library room never came into being. The reality of monastic book collections was that they were spread out throughout the complex depending on the function of the books, right? In other words, books were everywhere. They were everywhere, and they changed depending on the use of space adjacent. This is Kai's room moving up. Most of the books here are Big Nate, Dogman, whatever Kai's into, right? The books are changing based on what's adjacent. Wood wants to be tall. This piece of wood we see, it's a single piece to the ground. Oops. A single piece, 6 meters long, 20 feet, all the way down. This is Kai's room. You can see these two. We have a number of colored glass windows on the east facade. Abuli from a recent walkthrough came and said, the space feels like a chapel because of the colored glass. And I love that because it's the book idea is monastic. The light draws on chapels. Nice connections. On the outside is the mango tree that Tina's parents planted 15 years ago. And Kai has offered for anyone who wants to visit, if you want to use his space for 200 rupees a month, he will let you use it from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. while he's at school. So it's a running offer. Feel free to take it up. And then we've had about 10 walkthroughs so far, about one every month next year. The next upcoming are 11th and 26th January if anyone's interested. But I find this is a fascinating moment in the walkthrough where we look at family photos. So the book core has books, it has family photos. It's a really dense collection of archival material. And this is actually an image of my great grandfather on my maternal side. And this gentleman looks exactly like me. For those of you here, you can see, I think it. My cousin found it about 6-7 years ago. And first she was astonished at the visual connect, right? Similarities. Then she flipped the photograph over and it said Bangalore, India, 1917. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. amazing. We had no idea that we had an India connection. My great grandfather came to Bangalore during World War One as part of the military and was stationed here for how long we don't know, but fascinating, no? Right? It's a living archive. This is our bedroom as we go up. Tina's and Kai's studies are on the left and at the back behind the wardrobe. But draw attention, this is a skylight on the top of the space, right? So it's not air conditioned. There's an exhaust fan in the skylight. We turn that on, hot air rises, gets extracted. Tina says it feels like the air conditioning's turned on when that happens. And the exhaust happens through this little projecting pipe. It's really, really effective. And next to this are 8 solar panels, which Sunil is here installed. The entire space, these are the solar system downstairs, just above the grease trap, right? So that comment, every aspect of life is being embraced. It's right at the front door. There's a grease trap, there's solar systems, there's pipes. It's all here. But it's an autonomous building. I love that word. Someone recently came and said that. It's autonomous. This is the view from the north. It overlooks the garden, which is north facing, so there's no direct light. It's all glass on the north. And I like to think of the space. You may notice the side walls are solid, right? The street side is solid, right? That shy front facade. It's very cave-like. I'd like to think of it like the primordial cave overlooking a garden, right? That's it. But most importantly, I like the fact that it looks like cat ears. Right, if you see the 2 spikes, it looks like a big giant cat just gazing like the Sphinx into the garden. And that brings us to this creature, our feline friend. And this is, I imagine this is her saying, I double dog dare you to come visit the library, right? You can see the dogs. This is Bonnie. We absolutely love her. We thought of bringing her here today, but then decided against it. But we really love her, and we wanted to make something that reminds us of her. She's still living, but we still want to be reminded when she's roaming the garden. So we made these other cat ears behind her. It's right at the entrance of the upper part of the library. And this is it. It's cat ears, but it's also a book sofa. So if you spend any time in archival libraries, you get old books, they make you place books on a sofa so the spine doesn't break or get damaged. So we said, let's make a book sofa out of wood. And the construction is inspired, all again coming back to Ramakrishna at the beginning. He's using solid stone to make the well. He's using natural materials in their monolithic form and just creating something beautiful out of that. So we said, let's use wood monolithically here at the entrance. You enter, you see some kind of special book. Every time you come, it will be different. But let's also use solid wood. So when you carve solid wood, of course, you see something like this. You see the section of the tree, right? Which we rarely see in this manner. And I like to think the project, the Urbs Indis Library, began at the 0 point, right? In the very center. And it began around this circle, this fire. Small group of us. And then I'd like to think maybe we're about here now, right? We're about 3 years out from that center point. It's growing and growing in ways like some predictable, some unpredictable, but it's growing. It's yet following this circular form, right? We're growing as small group community, yet around the circle, around the well, right? People are coming. We're drawn to this experience, this kind of communal experience. This circle, right? It keeps coming back as a form. I like to think here, there's this fire. Here, there's an invisible fire that's connecting us, right? It's kind of this book core radiating, but it's a fire for the urban. It's a fire for the built environment, the spaces we live in. And it's growing. And who knows what the space will look like at this point in the archive, right? It's living, it's taking shapes we don't know, it's expanding, it's yet following this broadly circular form, which is very community focused and based. And maybe at that point, it's 15 years from now, Kai's out of the house, and perhaps he rents his entire space to us permanently. And it's the library expands, right? And then maybe if we go farthest out, right? beyond our lifetimes. This is one of the hopes. We have to talk to Kai extensively about this still. Um, he's shaking his head, but maybe the entire space, right, becomes the library. Yeah, that's one of the hopes, that this kind of chapel-like space is very flexible. The entire space becomes a living archive where people come, they explore, and in the same way that I met Geddes, I met Fayazuddin, I met Hector Tuluk, people come and make their own connections. They find people that inspire them in their own work in ways we can't predict, that ways none of us will know. We don't know what that shape will be, but this is the hope, and I think this is the possibility, and the energy of a living archive. So with that, I will close. Thank you very much, and happy to chat and have some Q&A time.
We'll take some questions. So if you could just raise your hand and we'll pass a mic. Also for people on Zoom, they can just type in their questions in the Q&A box and we'll just read them out. Uh, we'll just give everyone a few seconds to think about their questions. Actually, I have one while we're at it. Um, we've been thinking about the idea of collections and collecting and what an archive does, and the idea is we've always seen them either like hosted in very like institutionalized spaces, so it's like museums, galleries, archives, it's like more formalized, uh, or we have these books and materials and ephemera that are personal collections which very few people are the lucky enough to see, and it's always like passed on from generation to generation and perhaps finds its way into a museum after say another 100 years. So uh, I think I was curious, like where you started looking at your private collection or your collection of rare books, or where that started, and to make it open to the public, and where you sort of see that just the collection itself, like the
Yeah,
impact that it may have because you've put it out in the world.
yeah, nice. So since 2007, I've been collecting books on Bombay. Then it expanded to other cities, and people would constantly get in touch and say, "Hey, can I borrow this book? Can I borrow that book?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure," but it was always random. So there's been this interest to access the collection as it grows by others, generally people I don't know. So that desire was there. Then I had these experiences with the 22 institutions, some very good, some very bad. um, and then it was kind of a reaction to those bad experiences to say, in no world should access to books be painful. It shouldn't be difficult, shouldn't be painful. Um, the library, I redacted the name and all. I got shouted at so bad when I went. I never set foot in that space again. Never. And I'm sure they have a great collection, but the experience was poor. So that experience is one of the core fires that said we're going to make a space that's beautiful, that's easy to access, that has, I think, really rich content. But most importantly, it's going to be a pleasure to access and a pleasure to use. So that's why, like, the ground floor is open, right? It's a garden. People can come, sit. It's peaceful. Read as long as they want. Um, uh, and yeah, and just offer that quiet moment with no red tape. Yeah. Yes, Sunil.
I don't necessarily so I would ask.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some contradictions every now and then. So, my question is, what was the idea behind the roof, the sloped roof? Because in India, like at least in Bangalore, every inch of space is a big premium. So,
Hmm.
roof space is also premium.
Hmm.
Now, a sloped roof takes out a lot of space inside the building,
Yeah.
and so does it compromise the access on the roof.
Hmm.
So, where did the idea of this sloped roof come in, and
Yeah.
why it is designed the way it is designed?
Yeah, yeah, great. No, intense question. So the sloped roof is the way it is for many reasons. I would say the first is actually to create a house that is on the street quiet. It slopes towards the street. The scale of the building is small on the street. It's shy. It's like often our delivery guys miss the building altogether when they're, when they're searching for it, right? That's deliberate. We want to be quiet. We want to be small scale, but we also want volume, right? For our space. So as you move away from the street, the volume expands. It goes up. And the advantage of that slope, is the solar panels, right? By that slope, it's directly facing south. So it's the most efficient positioning for the 4.8 kilowatt system that we installed together. So it's practical. It creates scale on the street. From inside, it creates this, it just creates like a shell. You saw one of the last images. It creates this cave-like room that we all are under together, the three of us. Yeah, and one of the most important things, and it's like, it sounds maybe cliche, but it helps prevent leakages, right? Because you keep water moving and it's less prone to leak. So the slope, water's constantly moving, going to the rainwater downtake pipes and then to the recharge well. It's not a flat roof where water has to, struggle its way to the outlet. So it's that very practical purpose also that we wanted to take advantage of. Yeah.
Glass in the house is by choice or invisible because of no other things?
The glass. We never asked that question. Good question.
This is the first time I've seen so much glass.
Yeah.
And I was there, I didn't notice so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there. The north is all glass, entire north facade, looking at the garden. All mesh is maybe just very difficult for maintenance, dust. But we didn't ask the question. Maybe no glass. I don't know. Good question for next project.
We have a few questions online.
Yep.
So Padmini Ray Murray says, thank you so much for this utterly delightful talk. As someone who works in the digital humanities, I was reminded of this idea of generous interfaces when you spoke about having the books being displayed face out. Is there a digital counterpart catalog, or would that be antithetical to its grounded nature?
So it's on the way. No, the liquidity, that little 500 rupee note I showed. So in relation to the 500 rupee notes we get, the digitization will happen. It's on our to-do list. We want every book to be at the minimum photographed, cataloged, accessible online, even contents page. That's at the bare minimum. That's what we're aspiring for. Partly because I often found it easier to discover books 10,000 miles away versus books down the street from wherever I was. So I think there's definitely a big strength in digitization that we're also working on. Yeah.
Thanks. Another question and a comment. So we have Basabi Basu, who says, an inspiring talk. For an introvert to have built a home that is so open seems paradoxical. What motivated this openness, and is it changing your personality?
So it's only open from certain perspectives. From the street, like I said, the Amazon guys have no idea where we are. Like nothing is open. And even the big community door, they don't know it's a door. So they're like walking around it like it's some creature. And then we swing it and they go they run off scared. So introverts, this is something I learned from Tina, although we're shifting shoes these days. I'm going more introverted. She's going the other way. Introverts are also very open, but once you get to a certain point in their lives. So I think once you enter the space, you cross that threshold of this kind of enigma from outside. Once you cross that, you're in, and everything is there to see. And that's the superpower of introverts, that we are hiding all that, but you have to work a little bit to discover it, I think.
does agree. Another question by Indranil Sengupta. How did the neighbors react to the design of your house, considering its unique architecture in a busy neighborhood?
So most have not really reacted. The biggest reaction we've received is the no compound wall will not work. They said dogs will poop on your property, which they do, and that's perfectly fine because it's not concretized, so it just fertilizes the ground. Said there'll be trash on the property, which is true. So every morning I pick up a few pieces of trash and things are clean. And then they said, worst of all, taxis will use your driveway to do a 3-point turn and go back. And you know what? It's okay. Like it's not the end of the world. So we live with those. And most of the neighbors just think we're generally nuts. Yeah, it's as simple. It's the most bizarre building they've ever seen. One of the chemists down the street, when they asked me, like, is this what houses in your foreign country are like? And I said, no, like not at all. It is purely us. Yeah.
What challenges did you have in terms of getting approvals? Because this building is more of an exception than a norm, going by the current construction standards. So, did you do a lot of convincing?
So I don't know. We're doing the ordinary. I began with people doing ordinary things extraordinarily, right? I forgot to add him here. I'm sorry, Pramod and Kiran. Our sanctions consultant and the person who got sanctioned fall in that category. We gave them everyone. There's like horror stories, no, about approvals. We gave drawings. In 24 hours, we had our approval. Like, and we didn't do anything like like here's some this and that. They were great. The plan is exactly as per sanction norms, and what we built is exactly as per the plan. So we had no problem. I'd be curious to hear what you think is unique, because it's exactly as per norms. We even one day had a BBMP official come to site, and he was like super excited, no, because under construction site, kya kich pitch ho raha hai. So he comes, measures things, and he was so upset. It's like all the setbacks, 1 meter, 1.5, 1. And then he left, and he was visibly angry, and I felt bad for him. Like I'm sorry. Like we followed the rules because we're afraid of the law. So yeah.
We can take one last question. This is
Yeah.
from Shivani Shah. She says, your architecture is co-authored, and there is a sense of a edgelessness in your work. The boundaries between life, personal interests, the world, time, architecture melt into each other, which is such a beautiful thing to experience. I was curious if there are certain methods or tools that allow you to hold the vastness of your life experiences and interests together.
Shivani. This is a Shivani question. She's a very deep thinker. I have no answer except what I started with. This project is 3 years of really focused hard work and 15 years of life that preceded it. And I consider that 15 years the day I left college to the 3 years, 15, 18. It's an accumulation. And this is something I'm learning from Tina. We are everything we experience. We are not just architects. We're not just designing plans. We are everything we experience. And when we bring all of that, I'm also learning this from Anne Lamott, writer. When we bring all of that to our work, it adds a richness that brings value. And I think it's something we don't, honestly, I don't think we see it very often in the built environment. But I think the more we bring all of our experiences to what we make, the richer the world is. So that's my response kind of to Shivani's deep question. Yeah.
We have a bit of a, someone's left us a comment and we thought this might be a nice way to end the conversation. So Khushru says, seeing the open toilet on the ground floor, I had the thought, in this house, even fart becomes art.
What? Sorry. So say it again. Say it again. What?
She says, seeing the open toilet on the ground floor, I had a thought, in this house, even fart becomes art.
That's because we're wholly embracing all of life, right? That's what the space is about. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who joined us, and we'll be back in January. And thank you so much, Robert, for doing this. And we'll see everyone soon.